Residents on the South Plains are watching their water rates skyrocket as municipalities work to become compliant with stricter water regulations. Back in 2001, the Environmental Protection Agency lowered the amount of arsenic allowed in drinking water.
We have learned this new standard has affected at least 3 cities on the South Plains: Denver City, Seagraves, and Wolforth. Investigative reporter Shaylee Sanders joins us now with the reasons behind the change and how it's affecting West Texans' pocketbooks. Shaylee?
Karen and Abner, the Environmental Protection Agency reported that long-term exposure to arsenic in drinking water has been linked to several different types of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Ideally, the EPA wants to eliminate arsenic in drinking water altogether, but realizes this creates a financial burden for community water systems. So the EPA lowered the standards of arsenic in drinking water from 50 parts per billion to 10 parts per billion, stating in their ruling that the cost is justified by the benefits. So we spoke to different cities right here on the South Plains to see just how much that cost is.
It's a federal government overreach. It's a lot of money.
State Senator Charles Perry says the Environmental Protection Agency's standards are politically motivated.
If the water was healthy for you to drink prior to the standard that's been in effect for 30 years, it's probably not unsafe tomorrow because the EPA arbitrarily lowered the standards.
Dr. Kamaleshwar Singh has a background in environmental toxicology and has published his research on the adverse effects of chronic exposure to arsenic.
Based on my study and based on what we are seeing in the literature nowadays, certainly arsenic even below 10 parts per billion have adverse health effects, including cancer, obesity, diabetes, immune response, cardiovascular diseases.
According to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality's records, Denver City has had historical arsenic violations and was referred to the EPA enforcement in February of 2013. The city manager there tells us they drilled 8 new wells, projects costing roughly $2.5 to $3 million in order to become compliant. Customers who are using 3,000 gallons of water are now paying about 15 to 20% more on their water bill. And for people using more than the average about 10,000 gallons, they've watched their water rates go up about 50%. The TCEQ confirms the city is no longer in violation and the EPA's enforcement order was closed in December of 2013.
It's filtered several times.
The city of Wolforth has spent $6.5 million to become compliant. Wolforth City Manager Daryl Newsom says they looked at reverse osmosis, but the water loss was too great. So they decided on a new technology called electrodialysis reversal.
It's more of a filtration process, but it's also electronic, so it takes the components, the bad stuff out, by filtering and reversing the electrical fields and then backwashing, and so it's pretty complex, but it really works quite well.
And it's not cheap.
Our citizens have already been paying an extra $23 a month on their water bill. We appreciate the patience of the citizens because they're already feeling the pain in the pocketbook.
The TCEQ says the city of Seagraves, which has a population of roughly 2,400 people, has multiple arsenic violations. They were referred to the TCEQ back in July of 2007, and an EPA enforcement order was issued in March of 2012. That order is currently being tracked by the EPA. The TCEQ confirms it provided assistance and conducted a feasibility study to help the city return to compliance. Seagraves' Director of Public Works says they are working with the TCEQ to determine the best way to become compliant. She does tell us they expect to raise water rates by $24.50 beginning in March. Senator Perry says while safety is important, treating water is not his #1 priority.
There's some communities that don't have water to treat. That's the challenges I faced in the district, is how do you get water to the places that don't have water. So treating it's the second problem, but the first problem is making sure everybody has it.
City managers across the South Plains tell us they expect water rates to continue to increase. Newsom and Wolforth says the money they've spent has only gone towards treating the water resources they have. Newsom says he is in the planning stages of bringing in more water that will cause another increase in resident water bills. Karen and Abner.
All right, thank you, Shaylee.